This Hawaiian has Democrats crying. Trump transition team co-chair Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi, I've watched you change, and I don't think you've changed that much. I actually think the world has changed.
Very much.
But I think you noticed what I'm talking about, that it wasn't necessarily left versus right. It was about this larger environment of dishonesty.
Yes.
And that it was like pitting people against each other rather than just like listening to the truth. What role are you going to play in this fight?
That's a nice segue there.
Yes, that was
Very
no segue at all.
No, it was really incredible. As you know, Bobby Kennedy and I were out on the campaign trail for the last several months, and it was amazing to see how many people were coming together because they were hungry for the truth and common sense leadership that was focused on how do we actually solve the very real problems that people in this country are struggling with every single day. At almost every one of our events, I would ask the crowd, raise your hand if you're a Democrat or you're a former Democrat. And in crowds of thousands of people, there were always somewhere between like 35 to 45% of the crowd would raise their hands. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing. At the last event that we did, it was in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And this was just a few days before Election Day. And it was they raised their hands, almost half of them raised their hands. And the cool thing was, people in the crowd started looking around, and all like 3,000 people stood up and started clapping and just showing them kindness and really symbolizing we are all Americans who love our country, who cherish peace and freedom. And I think that's the result that we saw on election night, was Americans coming together for our country.
So, to conclude, Secretary of Defense.
President Trump is making some decisions.
Yes. Yeah, you know, there are a lot of people that that lost a level of status. Think about the Republicans in 2016, who they saw this whole thing coming and it threatened them. And then they just became like, look at Bill Kristol, like somebody like that. It's like they just went in the other direction because it was about a loss of status. So they needed to find their status somewhere else. Adam Kinzinger. Completely nuts. Liz Cheney, nuts. It's because
Conway, what's his name? George
Conway, yes. He's on Ozempic. Yeah. He's still ugly. I don't even have a question. Oh, my question is this. If you remove the left and right and just look at the hoaxes, that's kind of one way to do it. It's like these people lied to you about the polling and about Biden's status. Is that the way forward? Focus on the media's lies.
Gosh, there's a lot here. I mean, yeah, I think going back to what you originally said, there's a lot of ego involved. It really just exposes that these people care more about themselves and their own status and position than they actually really care about what makes politics so personal, which is who we have in positions of power affects our everyday lives. Mm-hmm. You know, to Kat's point, we have to be able to come together around the things that we share in common, which is we are all Americans. Mm-hmm. And if we really care about each other in our country, let that be the starting point, freedom and peace and prosperity. The thing that I first experienced when President Trump got elected in 2016, I was invited to come and meet with him 2 weeks after the election, right before Thanksgiving here in Trump Tower. First Democrat to go and see him. Mm-hmm. We had an hour-long conversation about foreign policy. What's going on with Islamist terrorism? How do we deal with ISIS and Al-Qaeda in the Middle East? It was a fantastic conversation and very meaningful. 5 minutes after I walked out the building, my phone blew up from messages from my former Democrat colleagues in Congress, even some family members, friends. How dare you humanize Donald Trump?
The humanizing
was the message that was throughout. And so it exposes their twisted mindset that it's not really about the issues they supposedly care about. It is about them, and it's about power.
Yeah, you can't humanize
their clout. Yeah.
Too late. They tried to kill him.
A story in 5 words.
FEMA screws over Trump supporters. Dave, this is an amazing story. A FEMA supervisor named Marnie Washington, yes, that Marnie Washington, remember her? She was fired after telling her FEMA aid workers to skip homes with Trump signs in the aftermath of Hurricane Milton in Lake Placid, Florida. It's called a clear violation of their core values, according to the FEMA director. And now he's being called to testify. Do you think this is an isolated incident?
No, I think it probably happened all over. But I mean, in fairness, they probably realized that the Trump homes were better survivalists. I mean, chances are if you had a "hate has no home here" sign, you were already dead.
Do you think getting fired is enough? Isn't that like that she just lost her job?
It is, but it's right in her face though, because it shows that like now Trump supporters can, you can outlast a hurricane and an election. So that's both kinds of blue waves.
Ooh, nicely. A little wordplay there.
Little
Kat.
bit.
Yeah. Very little, perhaps.
Very little.
The audience was not impressed by that
I
wordplay.
wasn't proud of
I was. Kat, the New York Times said the claims about this stuff was false on October 4th, and they still haven't issued any kind of retraction.
Ugh. Yeah, I guess I'm not surprised by that either. But if you go back to the previous segment, isn't this the logical conclusion of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If these people don't care about your livelihood, and then livelihood means what you think it means, then why would you want to save their lives?
Mm-hmm.
If these people don't care about if you think livelihood means life,
yeah.
then this is the logical conclusion of that, and that's why that's so harmful, and we need to fight against that.
You know what's amazing about this person? She put it in writing.
Put it in writing, but she probably some other people saw it too, and nobody was like, well, I can't tell her that's not okay because she's going to think that she's not letting me have my livelihood.
I thought it was a hoax.
Yeah,
I thought it was. It's like, who would put that in an email?
Of course, but it is the logical conclusion of a lot of the things we've been hearing put in other ways.
Yeah.
This is kind of a minor version of the weaponization of federal government. I mean, it does make sense then when you look at the global.
Yes.
You know.
And why would she put it in writing if she didn't think it was okay?
Yeah.
First of all. Second of all, they only fired her because we found out about it.
Yeah.
Really, truly. And it does. It exposes, yet when we talk about the weaponization of the federal government against opponents of the current regime, obviously we look at Donald Trump, target number one. Kamala Harris put me on a domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. But it's people like that in Florida, people in Western North Carolina, who I was with the day before Election Day, and they feel left behind. And guess what? The vast majority of them came from counties that were overwhelmingly, traditionally, Trump voters. And so they felt what we saw there that was exposed. Why is FEMA not coming out here for us? Why are they not showing up for us? It's this political retaliation that we've seen and that voters have seen, and thank God President Trump's going to end it.
You were the list that you were put on. Plotting my next question. That's very nice. It was called Quiet Skies?
It's called Quiet Skies. The TSA is the administrator of this very little-known secret domestic terror watch list. And I experienced the effects of it through, like, radically invasive, in-depth screening every time I flew anywhere.
Wait.
Surveillance.
You must be on Quiet Skies.
How do you know you're on it?
Well, this is the thing. These federal air marshals saw all of these red flags. They're like, holy, why is she on the list? This makes no sense. She's a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve. She's a former member of Congress. She's got a security clearance, all of these things. And anyway, they came out and whistleblowers provided evidence to Congress saying, like, this is one of many people who are the targets of political retaliation, who the TSA administrator has never explained to Congress, shared who is on the list, the criteria for being on the list, or there's zero transparency.
It's nuts. It is nuts. And
My list just makes me introduce myself to all my neighbors.
You get it?
it is. It's just so funny. It's so Orwellian in a way, too, because it's called Quiet Skies. You know, it's like, I want Quiet Skies.
And here's the most important thing. It's been in place for years, spent huge amounts of money. The air marshals hate it. They've been trying to kill it for years because it's a waste of their time. And it has not done a single thing. There's not a single example of a suspected terrorist that they caught or some evil act that they stopped.
Of course.
Zero rate of effectiveness, and yet this is what we're paying for.
Amazing. Last word to you, Michael. What do you make of this craziness? It's almost too on the nose, like a person actually putting it in writing, saying, "Don't go to that house." I honestly thought that it was like just one of these things, these floating stories, but it's real.
I mean, look, I'm still such a softie. I mean, I want redemption, I want reconciliation, but you can't get that until you get the truth out, until you get some accountability. I don't think we can trust the people that weaponize the government against people like Tulsi Gabbard. I don't think we can trust the people that turn Department of Homeland Security into a censorship operation to censor one side of the political debate, to censor true stories about vaccine side effects. We need the Twitter files for the CIA, for the FBI, for DHS, for every single government agency that's been covering this stuff up for 50 years. It's been 50 years since we had the Church Committee hearings to get to the bottom of CIA abuses of power. We need a Church Committee hearing, 2.0 for all the stuff that's been going on over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
That's why they're so terrified of Trump.
Yeah. The dude from Fatal Attraction has a shockingly astute reaction. Michael Douglas, you remember him, told Bill Maher he understands why Trump and the Republicans won big last week. The actor, who won an Oscar for something called Wall Street, says it's all about the economy. Roll it, Fiona.
Those people who are going, week to week with the inflation, it's killing them. And I think we really underestimated it. And the very fact now that we can talk about Republicans as being the people, the party for the people, and that we are this elitist party on the left, Democrats, is wild.
Wild. Finally, someone in Hollywood figures it out. One down, 4 million to go. Cats. It's kind of weird watching this flip take place. It's happening in a bunch of different areas. It's like, what did you ever think that like the Republicans would be anti-war, pro-free speech, and the Dems would be the opposite?
Honestly, it has been interesting to watch, but I think also another thing in terms of where the Democrats went wrong is, remember how long they were trying to convince people that things were fine? How bad inflation got, and they were like, no, it's not. As if the average person doesn't have the ability to see how much a thing at the grocery store costs. Actually, they weren't probably ever going to the grocery store, so they didn't realize, like, no, maybe they didn't know the prices were on it. I don't know. But telling people, like, no, you're not suffering. And I think that you can't have people not believe what's in front of their own eyes, and it just became that obvious. It wasn't like they were going towards things that people can't understand. Everybody understands what the bill is that they have in front of them.
I cannot believe you didn't make an analogy to a relationship.
Oh, I mean, I could, I guess. I didn't. Trying to broaden my horizon.
Tulsi, I think it's like people like Michael and you, by kind of like, I don't know, you didn't leave the reservation left you, but venturing over into, I don't know, let's say in the right world, you're seeing a shift with speech, especially. That used to be the primary left-wing cause, and now they can't be trusted. Once they got into power, suddenly speech became the first thing to go.
Yeah, and you've seen in the wake of President Trump's resounding re-election, how many of these pundits and talking heads and Democrat elite are on television basically saying, well, the problem is us. The problem is free speech. So the first thing that they're calling for is to shut down free speech on social media, as though that's going to solve it. The fact that their first knee-jerk reaction is censorship, again, exposes they are anti-free speech, they reject the Constitution, and these people who ran a whole campaign on being the defenders of democracy against the guy they warned would be the end of democracy. You just heard Jen Psaki say it. They're the ones who actually don't believe in our voices, the voices of the American people being heard and deciding our election.
It's weird. I feel like, and maybe I'm being too optimistic, Michael, but I feel like the left-right bifurcation thing might be coming to an end, because what was behind that the whole time was a media machine that was trying to do that. And now you see kind of like this populist movement blending things.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us thought that the media at least reflected reality to some extent. It might be biased, but there was still some basic reflective role. I would say the moment that the media just really died for just ordinary Americans is the moment where, literally within 24 hours, the media said Biden is totally fine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the next day was he has to go.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just the distance of time was just too short. I mean, everybody had to see what was going on for that. But this is, I mean, look, it's a massive year. I mean, we will look back on this year for, I mean, I think 100 years from now, you'll see it as a big pivotal turning point. And it's just there's a political revolution that occurred. It's not just the election of Trump, it's the popular vote, which gives him the legitimacy and the credibility. And I think that everybody needed, including the Democrats, as a hard reset. But then really, yeah, I mean, look, Elon Musk and Joe Rogan are like the two biggest people in media. They've completely changed it. Why go be interviewed by CBS News 60 Minutes for like a 3-minute clip or for a little bit of a clip when you do 3 hours with Joe Rogan and then people can see who you really are? I mean, I think Joe is somebody that has platformed us and given us the time and the space to get at some of the more complicated questions of what really matters and what we got to do about it.
Yeah, but in order to do Joe Rogan, you have to be able to handle a follow-up question.
Right.
And that is really hard. And the like with trans issues, almost with every left-wing issue, the follow-up question is like, well, how do you do this?
Yep.
Why would you do this? What about you, Mr. Landau?
What do I think of this? I think that eventually, yeah, I mean, they have to flip at some point. I mean, it's ridiculous. Michael Douglas, I mean, this election left a worse taste in his mouth than foreplay with Catherine Zeta-Jones. Except you can't brag about this.
Why Catherine Zeta-Jones?
That's who he said did it.
Oh, yeah.
But I think he's right. I mean, the moment that you could really see that you were being lied to was Trump gets shot and Biden's going, I'm perfect, I'm sound mind and body. Trump gets shot in the ear and he's like, I got COVID, I gotta go, see you later. It was in a second that it flipped. And America saw that. You're right. They did not give it any time to breathe. They just completely lied to you, and then we're like, oh, hey, we're lying to you.
Yeah, it's the same thing when they said the day before the election, all the way up to the end, he was going to be a fascist dictator, and then Joe the next day says, you're going to be okay. Yeah. It's like, okay, you lied. Up next, Oprah only appeared because Kamala's check cleared. Kamala's campaign paid Oprah's company, Harpo Productions, $1 million for that town hall that she hosted, which was a disaster. What? If you were a small donor, you got to be pissed.
I mean, that's up there with Oprah raising money for the Maui victims, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're just like, aren't you worth $1 billion or more? I mean, this is the twilight of the idols. I mean, we're in a moment here where just the veneer has been ripped off of everything, the media, the government, the deep state, the entertainment industry. You just realize the extent to which it's just been this giant propaganda machine for the last 8 to 10 years, and it's really coming to an end.
You know, Kat, do you remember when I said, why is the narrative of the race so that it's so close? It was in order to generate that money. The race was never close, but they had to keep saying it to pollsters so people would give money so Oprah could get her $1 million.
It wasn't just Oprah. The amount of money they spent on Beyonce, and they had all these celebrities. Like, I just don't. But that goes back to the last segment. They're like, this is the party of the elites, and it's like, you know what? This is how we'll win. We'll invite Diddy's entire guest list to endorse her.
Yes.
Like,
That's where the $1 million went. Baby oil. Baby oil. It's a lot. But it does show that celebs don't matter.
No, it
No,
does.
not at all.
Absolutely. I just saw that P. Diddy's having trouble selling his house. And I assume it's because anybody who walks in just slides around like the burglars in Home Alone. But I mean, yeah, $1 million to Oprah. That's she doesn't need it, but I mean, that will buy a lot of Ozempic.
I think she has insurance covering that. Tulsi.
You're right. She's
Did you just fact check her? Like,
Yeah, I fact-checked
like
it.
his joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think she has
Explain
this.
how insurance works.
the copay's $50 grand.
Tulsi, isn't this the other story too? That it's never about winning an election; it's about who gets the money from the election.
It's a disgusting industry. I just think that this whole thing was another example of Kamala's deception. She wanted to try to recreate like the feelings that voters might have around like the old Oprah show.
Yeah.
Create this talk show vibe and not tell everybody, hey, yeah, we're actually paying her $1 million
Yeah.
to do this thing and try to prop Kamala up. And even during that, like, she did not do well.
No, and Oprah seemed like she didn't want to be there
Yeah.
because I guess $1 million wasn't enough. Nobody was sincere about it.
No.
The people that said the world, they had to get paid to be sincere. Assholes.
It was like the 500th time we heard,
Yeah.
I was born in a middle-class family.
Yeah.